What's up YouTube? This is Marcus again, and I'm back with another video. This time, as promised, I'm going to be doing the paint protection film application to the Ducati Multistrada. So this is going to be my first experience with this. I purchased this outright. This is not a sponsored video or anything like that. The PPF that I'm using is from a company called Second Skin, and this is, as I said, going to be my first experience with it. I'm going to show you the application. I'm going to talk about the ease of applying, the fit and finish afterwards, and see how it ends up looking, whether or not the quality of the paint protection film is a good crystal clear so it doesn't really change the look of the painted surfaces. But all in all, this is just to get protection for the front area of the bike. Now, one thing you might notice is I'm using gloves. Anytime you're going to use paint protection film, you want to have gloves so that way you're not putting fingerprints on the inside of the film. Now, the first thing you have to do is clean the surfaces very thoroughly. They include some alcohol type wipes. They give you these. However, I have my own solution. This is a pre-wax cleanser, an IPA alcohol mix. So I'm going to use this to thoroughly clean, and I'm going to clean as I go because there will be some dust and maybe even sweat that I get on the painted surfaces. So rather than have to clean them twice, I'm just going to clean each surface as I get ready to apply the film. And this is to make sure the surface is as clean as possible to allow for a good adherence of the film. All of the adhesive, the paint protection film, comes pre-cut, so everything is laid out on pieces, and there's a diagram with the instructions that come to show you which piece goes where in case you can't tell. Unfortunately for me, the instructions ended up getting stuck to a piece that did not actually adhere to the backing, so I have some instructions. This is one of the side pieces, the silver pieces, so unfortunately I won't be able to use that. Alright, so as I mentioned, this is my first time doing this, so I have to admit I'm a little nervous. It comes with this solution. You just have to add water because it is a concentrated solution, and this is a lubricant for both sides of the film. So you're supposed to spray it on generously. First corner. Now this is the large nose that I just sprayed. So you want to be careful. I'm going to handle this whole thing with care. I'm going to lay the rest of the sheet down on the tank. I'm going to make sure I don't get this curled up and ends up sticking to itself. I think ideally this would be better served as a two-person job. I like a challenge, so we're going to see how this works. Hope that pans out. So you use that lubrication, put it on there roughly. And optically, it seems to be a nice, good, transparent look to it. So we'll see. Basically get it into place. This comes with the kit. And then you also spray some of the lubrication on the outside to be able to allow the squeegee to glide cleanly without putting any scratches or abrasion marks on the outside of the film. So you usually want to start in the center, but you got to really position this properly, so you want to get the best fit. So I'm going to try and get this nose piece here. I want to basically start squeezing some of the water out so you can get some adhesion. So I'm using my finger, and then you can reposition. Because it's lubricated on the back, it's easy to lift and adjust your positioning as needed. I don't like the shape of this squeegee. So once you start working some of the water out, you get some adherence on the film, and that keeps it in place, which will therefore make it easier to work the water out of the other sides. I'll have to lift this right side up a little bit. Not too much of a bubble in here. And I will say that the lubrication is working as well as you would expect. I think I have this too high because I don't want this lip to lift off the top rounded edge, which would then make it lift off prematurely at some point. So I want to bring this down as close to the bottom edge as possible. I just have to bring this whole piece down. It's a little too high. And I'm getting a top edge that seems to want to lift off this rounded piece here. Now this will adhere better once all the water is worked out, and you take a heat gun to it. It might be easier to actually use with the, there we go, a buffer of sorts. to say optically this definitely looks good. That remains to be the case over a period of time as this ages from exposure to the sunlight and the elements. Alright, I don't know if you can see in the camera. The bottom edge is okay, but this top edge is giving me a little trouble because it's bubbling up here. But we'll see how that works out with some more squeegeeing. We're talking about a flat foam that has to be stretched around curves. And this is where the experience comes into the installation. I promise I'm going to try and edit this video to make it shorter than real time, because this is a definite time-consuming process. Son of a bitch. I am not happy with this piece at all. Not only is it not meant to cover the whole thing, which is okay, what I don't like about that is that this is a glossy film and this is not. So you can see the difference between the two sides, which is not something I'm crazy about. Number two, they did not create a cutout to go around the beginning of the word Multistrada, which means these letters will forever retain air, keeping this bubbled up, this pocket of air that stays around the MULT will forever be a problem. That and the fact that you can see a distinct line where the paint protection film ends, I don't like it. And I've cut down here at the bottom to get rid of the instructions that adhere to the inside of that. That is messy, but I figured let me give it a shot. However, I am not happy with it, so I think I'm just going to take that whole section off and leave this part unprotected. As long as this painted surface is protected, this is protected. If you can see it on film, I'm not sure, but you got this bubble up here, which I seem incapable of getting out. So all in all, not the greatest, but I'm going to move on to the front fender, see what I can do about protecting this, because these typically take a huge beating. I just don't like the noticeable difference between where the film begins and ends on this panel. Shiny, not shiny. It's a little too obvious where this painted surface is shiny to shiny. You don't see the obvious difference between where it's protected and where it's not. I'm on to this side of the fender, cleaning it with the alcohol prep. So the paint protection film can adhere nicely. This is a hugely important step. Wipe, make sure it's buff dry every nook and cranny so that it doesn't interfere with the adhesion. Mist with the lubrication. Lubricate it with a nice mist. And then lay it on as close to possible. Now you can see right here, this is the trouble area. Fender folds back and rolls away also. Here it's good, there's a slight curve, but as you can see the film takes to that naturally. This front edge is on top of the hole, so I'm just going to push the film slightly, shift this one. You want the edges around the holes to be as equal as possible, top and bottom, so it's a little bit of a twist action here. Getting this right would be helpful, because you definitely know that if they've done a precision measurement and cut, then getting these two holes lined up properly without any bubbles in the edges, and everything else should fall into place properly. And that seems to be what I found on the other side. Of course, in the beginning it's difficult. Now over here there's an edge that's sticking out. I don't know if you can see it. It looks too long. So if I try to bring this in, now suddenly this edge of the hole gets close. But I think that's better than it was. So I'll do the same for the bottom, trying to keep that in place. Now this back edge now comes over the hole. So I think that's as much as I can take it. Now I'm going to squeegee on the top after applying a little mist of lubrication so that the squeegee can slide. And then with an angle to the squeegee, work out some of the air. I'm probably going to have to make an incision, cut and overlap film like I did on the other side, working out a few small bubbles that I see. When I'm doing these, I'm trying to do it gently so as not to move the entire film itself and misplace it. Now that I have it put in well lined up, I'm liking the way that's looking and fitting. Just like on the other side, it's laying down nicely on the majority of the fender. I'll squeegee up out of this corner. It stops right about here, but there's about a quarter of an inch of a curve. Again, it's not really challenging me much, not being stubborn, even on this top edge. This back edge is really right on the edge. It was perfect to get it right to the edge, and that's what I prefer actually. This is the trouble spot. Let's see how I'm going to handle that this time. Now I think I'm going to try and do a cut there like I did before. It gets too close. A little more adhesive in there. Talking to myself in my garage. Let's get this back part in first. I literally have to hold back flap in with my thumb to get this front part to overlap. But the air wants to keep coming back. So let's just try a little pressure. Greedy. I think the heat helps activate some of the adhesive underneath, not just drying out the lubrication solution. And that's that one. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Just like I did on the other side, I had to put a slit so I can overlap the film. A little heat helped adhere it. Let's see if it comes up. Quick look on the other side. It's doing okay. Okay, so here I am a few days later, including after a ride on Sunday, and I wanted to take a second look at the film now that it has had ample opportunity to dry up and adhere well to the surface. So I have this manually focused as close as I can get essentially, and you can see the leading edge there on the front. Not sure if you can see here, but trying to get close into the edge. And there's a tiny bit of overlap there. This side piece here is actually really good. Same on the other side. Those pieces I'm happy with. The other part that was a little troubling was the back flap here. You might recall I pretty much struggled with that throughout. That was the most difficult part of the installation. Alright, now looking at the front fender, you can see there are a few pieces. One main piece that goes over the two holes for bolting the fender to the fork, and I'll get in a little bit tighter so you can see. So here's a second look at the lower part of the fender. You can see the slit that I made, pretty much dead center, and then just in front of that, there's another bubble that came up. Not really happy about that, but it's underneath and not very visible unless you're looking really closely. So I'll pan up so you can see how it looks around the holes. Those are some pretty good, precise cuts. And then the front edge above the Ducati safety pack sticker, just before the fender starts to curve back, it's pretty good, nice and clean. There's another film piece here, and then a third piece up here, and those are adhering pretty well. There's a little bit of bubbling right at this front edge, and then this piece was nice and clean because it was small, and then the same thing on the other side where it's pretty good. So all in all, it was a mixed bag, both in quality of the film and the application process. Again, this was my first time doing this, so I did not have any experience, which I'm sure attributes to the fact that it was more difficult than it should be. But this is a real world example. If you take on a project like this yourself, you may experience the same thing. Probably spend more time than a lot of people would, but I was looking for some protection that isn't quite obvious, and I'm happy with that overall. Because as you can see from that front nose section, from a normal standing distance of about 4 or 5 feet, barely noticeable that there's any film in there unless you start looking closely at the side edges on the front part of the gas tank where the Ducati sticker extends forward. Those pieces are protected and not very noticeable. And then on the fork, again, there's some protection. Once again, I wish there was some kind of protection for the headlights themselves, because those do take a beating and they are very expensive. but that was not part of the kit. Nonetheless, I'm satisfied with what I have protected: the front nose, the two tank pieces that extend, and most of the front fender, which, as you know, takes probably the biggest beating of all. So even though I didn't get my entire money's worth for the protection of those two silver pieces on the side, the red painted parts are the ones that I really want to protect. So the kits aren't that expensive, but they are going to take quite a lot of time to install, and you might get a mixed bag of results from that, as you saw from this video. Anyway, let me know what you think about this whole process, what you think about the film, how it looks on the bike in terms of the clarity. I have protection and it's not quite obvious, and that's a good thing. So thanks for your time. Thanks for watching the video. I'll catch you on the next one.